From OG Shelly bush camping to the Great Buzz Lightyear apocalypse, this is the entire history of Brawl Stars' most hated brawlers. Starting with the most trolled brawler in the game, Poco. Back in the early days, Poco was the pick for that one friend who had no idea what they were doing, and their only job was to heal the better player. But when star powers were introduced, Poco mains decided they were done being support bots and started going aggro with Screeching Solo. And ever since 2018, the community has been begging for Supercell to nerf Poco. Did you know Rosa used to have 35,000 HP, which is why she became the most hated brawler back in 2019. You see, Supercell thought it was a great idea to give her a super that reduced 80% of all incoming damage. At max level, she had 7,000 HP, and with that shield, she was basically walking around with 35,000 HP for a few seconds. It was like fighting the final boss, and your only real option was to run. Eventually, balance changes hit, and now she's just forgotten old meta. Say Invisi-Heal to an OG Brawl Stars player and watch them start twitching, because yeah, it was that broken. Right after Brawl Stars went global in 2019, Leon was hands down the most overpowered brawler in the entire game, and the reason was that cursed Invisi-Heal star power. Back then, it healed him 1,000 HP per second while invisible, so he could be losing a fight, pop his super, vanish, heal to full in seconds, and then come back swinging like nothing happened. And the worst part is he'd hit you a few times, instantly recharge his super, and do it all over again. We could say back then Brawl Stars was at the peak of P2W. Back in 2020, Brawl Stars completely blew up, becoming one of the most popular mobile games ever. Nearly half of today's player base actually joined that year. And with Shelly as the default brawler and tons of sweaty matches going on, new players were all looking for an easy win. That's when Shelly bush camping took over the entire game. All you had to do was charge your super, hide in a bush, and wait to blast the first unlucky enemy who walked by, usually for an instant kill. It was the perfect noob strategy, and it drove the pros insane. Shelly mains were everywhere, and they weren't playing fair. Shelly then officially became one of the most hated brawlers in the game. 8-Bit's introduction is something Brawl Stars players will never forget. When he dropped, Supercell went all in on the retro arcade theme, but they also went a little too crazy with his star power. Yep, I'm talking about Extra Life. It literally let 8-Bot respawn with full HP after being defeated. Combine that with his tanky health, and he basically became the Doug of 2020 Brawl Stars. In Showdown, he was nearly unstoppable, but in other game modes, he was kinda useless. After enough chaos and complaints, Supercell finally swapped it out for boosted booster star power that focused on damage. And now, the Edgar! Dropped in 2020 and instantly became the king of no skill wins. He was the first brawler after Mortis to have lifesteal, but unlike Mortis, Edgar had it built right into his main attacks. And when you combine that with his jump super and also did damage, it was essentially game over. You'd just be walking down the map, minding your own business, and out of nowhere, boom! Edgar jumps on you, starts healing like crazy while you do 0 damage back. It was the golden age of skillless gameplay and literal definition of press button to win. Many players know that Crow's always been pretty strong in Brawl Stars, especially with some crazy mechanics like flying across the map with a ball in Brawl Ball. But even back then, he wasn't as hated as he was in late 2020. That's when his damage over time ability really started to drive people crazy, because that's exactly when Byron dropped, a brawler who also dealt damage over time. And together, players discovered the most annoying combo ever, Crow plus Byron. The constant chip damage made it nearly impossible for enemies to heal, and to make things worse, Crow also reduced enemy damage by 30% and could slow them down with his gadget. Back when players were already struggling with auto-aiming hackers ruining matches, Supercell decided to drop a brawler that felt like a straight-up joke, Amber. Her release was not well received, mainly because she was the first brawler that required 0 aim to play. Just hold the button and melt everything in your path. Her fire stream was long, super easy to control, and dealt a ton of damage. At the time, it honestly felt like Supercell looked at the hackers and said, you know what, let's just make a brawler with such a feature. Gale might look like one of the most underrated brawlers in Brawl Stars, but pro players know the truth. He's secretly broken. Especially when he first dropped in 2021, Gale became the first brawler who could push enemies away and cycle his super insanely fast. Also, his star powers are pretty good. One stuns, the other slows, and both are a nightmare to deal with. Players essentially used him to troll enemies by pushing them into zone, and close-ranged brawlers stood 0 chance against him. Back in 2021, players were begging for a nerf on none other than Nita. And no, it wasn't just Nita herself, it was Bruce. Her bear basically turned into a stun grenade. Players figured out a combo: spawn one bear, then throw a second one right onto enemies and spam the stun gadget. Add her fast punching star power on top of that, and you basically basically had a heat-seeking death bear that deleted every brawler. Ranked matches were hell, and Nita quickly became one of the most hated brawlers in the game. I bet you forgot that Surge used to have a gadget that let him teleport. Yup, back in late 2021, he was absolutely Surge. Get it? Okay, I'm sorry. However, Surge mains could just sneak up on enemies, teleport over walls in stage 4, and delete them in a few shots like it was nothing. And if things became too dangerous, he could just teleport and run. But then Supercell stepped in and replaced the gadget with a stage upgrade one, and after that, Surge mains were probably crying in their rooms for a while. If there was one brawler who deserves a trophy for annoying people just by running away, it's gotta be Janet. When she dropped in 2022, she became the first brawler who could actually fly. And once players realized her super gave her full flight time, they used it to run around the map non-stop. Chasing her was like trying to catch a mosquito. Did you know that back in October 2022, there was an online trend that made tons of players suddenly start playing Mortis like total bots? Yep, it was the Mortis trickshot trend. Players were watching these compilations of pros landing insane trickshot goals like it was nothing, but when they tried it in an actual match, it looked nothing like it. It basically turned half the player base into bad randoms overnight. Mr. P might be the real reason we don't see Big Boss mode in Brawl Stars anymore. If you go back to 2023, he was actually the final boss in that mode, and it was pure chaos. Not only did Mr. P have a massive health bar, but his porters had almost as much HP as he did, and he could spam them non-stop. It turned into a 5v5 boss battle with endless minions. Just imagine if he had his hypercharge back then. Speaking of trends, back in November 2022, Jackie's rebuild gadget suddenly went viral in the Brawl Stars community because players discovered a hilarious way to troll in Brawl Ball. They'd use the gadget to trap the ball behind a wall or obstacle, and if the enemy team didn't have a wall breaker, they were cooked. So if you saw Jackie during that time, you probably would have had a pretty frustrating match. November 2023 was a rough time for gem grab lovers, and the reason was actually Charlie. A lot of players don't realize this, but when she dropped, her super had one of the most broken mechanics in the game. You could literally steal gems just by cocooning someone. No need to defeat them, instead just throw the super, trap them, and boom, they drop all their gems. And let's just say, a lot of matches were won in the most unfair way possible. I bet you didn't know that Miko was actually free for a limited time during Brawler days in late 2023, and yeah, that decision made a lot of players angry. I mean, just look at him. He can jump, steal ammo, and basically plays like Mortis, but with the power to leap over walls. So once he dropped for free, every lobby suddenly turned into a Miko apocalypse. And it wasn't just the chaos. Players also found game-breaking glitches that let him survive forever in Showdown's Poison Zone. Miko quickly became one of the most hated brawlers in the game, right up there with Edgar. Tick's situation was completely out of hand. This brawler was basically bombing the entire server, and everyone hated it. When his hypercharge dropped in 2024, it gave his main bomb a bunch of extra bombs after it exploded. And here's the crazy part, it recharged both his super and hypercharge insanely fast. Now add in his regular attacks, his gadget that multiplies bombs, and event mutations, and yeah, the whole map basically turned into a landmine field. Did you know Lou got a totally unnecessary buff that made Brawl Stars players lose their minds? Yep, it happened at the end of 2024 when Supercell randomly decided to buff his reload speed. Oh, and let's not forget, that was the exact time he got his overpowered hypercharge. So now we had Lou, who was already pretty decent, suddenly freezing the entire map. And honestly, that South Park style skin kind of felt like Supercell sent us a message for Lou's buff. The SpongeBob event in 2024 was fun, unless you ran into Colt, because during that event, his chum balls turned him into the most hated brawler in the entire game. For the first time ever, players were begging to not see Colt go against them, because his passive ability basically gave him homing bullets, and not just slightly assisted shots. These things curved around corners and locked onto enemies even if you shot in the wrong direction. Let's talk about the biggest apocalypse Brawl Stars has ever seen, when players completely forget that regular brawlers even existed. Yeah, I'm talking about the Buzz Lightyear takeover during the Toy Story collab in 2024 to 2025. For the first time ever, Supercell dropped a limited time brawler that you could only play during the event. Max rank, max hypercharge, 3 different modes to choose from, and of course, they made him completely overpowered. Every match was just Buzz Lightyear versus Buzz Lightyear. Other brawlers might as well have been deleted. And when Supercell was asked about it, they just said they wanted to make him fun to play. fun? It was a war zone, Supercell. In the 2025 update that removed masteries, Supercell accidentally unleashed what they'd probably call a bunch of $10 problems. And one of those problems brought Janet right back to her title as the most hated brawler in the game, because she got a glitch that gave her infinite hypercharges. Literally, use her hypercharge once, and every super after that is going to be hypercharged. She could stay in the air and aim her bombs easily. Thanks, Supercell, for inventing new ways for players to rage. There you have it. This was the history of Brawl Stars' most hated brawlers. Make sure to subscribe and check out the video on the screen.